Today we're going to be doing a video on Hogwarts Legacy with the RTX 3080, and we're going to be starting it off at 1080p on the ultra settings. Just jumping into the settings and then graphics. Here we are at the ultra settings. No RT obviously, but I'll enable it as we go through. And for display at 1080p and no DLSS. Alright, let's get into it and see what we can do. This game is very CPU intensive, as you're about to see. GPU sitting at 70% usage, and CPU sitting at 20% usage. And this is with the 5900X. Now, one thing that we can do is go into the settings and come all the way down to view distance quality and population quality, and bring this down to maybe medium or low. This should give you a bit of a CPU and GPU headroom, and will result in around 10 to 20 extra FPS. But this video is about ultra settings, so I'm going to keep it at ultra. And let's continue on. So once we leave the castle, FPS goes up to 104, I guess. And GPU sitting at 92 to 95% usage. At 440p, I'm guessing we're going to be getting around 70 to 80 FPS as well, since we're getting bottlenecked at times in this area. The game looks quite decent. With TAA, it looks a bit blurry at times, but for the most part, it does look quite good. I've already looted these, so I can't pick him up twice, unfortunately. But it's kind of nuts how this area is filled with foliage. It's very intensive on the GPU and it's still sitting at 80% usage. It is kind of nuts. Like, we got trees there, we got bushes everywhere, the grass, everything is very GPU intensive, and it's not. GPU is still at 80% usage. The Forbidden Forest. So if you got a more powerful CPU, then obviously your FPS will be higher than this, probably over 100 really easily. And if you got a weaker CPU or a similar CPU, then your FPS will be very close to the 60s, in the 70s and 80s on average. It's not ideal obviously, but what can we do? Well, at least with Dead Space, we had a very intensive game on the CPU and GPU side, but at least it was optimized well enough that it used up all the threads on the CPU, so it wasn't sitting at 20% usage the whole time. It is just, come on man. At this point there's not much point in us using DLSS, obviously, we're getting bottlenecked. And at 440p, I'm guessing it will be the same situation. But 4K will come in handy if we don't get VRAM bottleneck. This card normally gets VRAM bottlenecked at this point, so this might be the case in this game as well. I wouldn't be surprised because we're already sitting at 9 gigs pretty much at 1080p Ultra. So pushing it up to 4K, it will push the VRAM up away to 9.5 gigs. You enable RT as well, and you're done at that point. No space for the VRAM at all. But the good thing is, the game doesn't have any stuttering. I've played the game for like 2 hours at this point, and it has rarely stuttered. That's a very good thing. If the game stutters and your FPS is high, the game is still unplayable regardless of the FPS. But if your FPS is, I guess, low, sitting in the 70s and 80s, but there's no stuttering, the game is still very playable. So that's the only positive I can see from it. Okay, I think this is a good spot for us to quit out. What are you looking at? I think this is a good spot for us to quit out and enable RT. Come back and see what we can do. So going to the settings and then scrolling down, enabling RT. Going to use the Ultra preset. This will be CPU and GPU intensive, but it should be far more GPU intensive than CPU intensive. So let's see what we can do. Alright, after a quick restart, we're playing the game with RT, and FPS is sitting in the 40s and 50s. It's kind of feeling stuttery too, which is not good. Mouse movement feels pretty sluggish too. Wow, that is rough. Looking at the reflections, that's pretty bad. It's pretty blurry to be honest. Like obviously it's working because we can see all the reflections. Even if I cover them, we can still see them. But yeah, there's not much detail in them. But let's move on. Hey, let's go. Get on our way. With RT enabled, the game will be a bit more CPU intensive, and VRAM will also climb up a bit higher as well. So getting VRAM bottleneck is a possibility at this point, because we were sitting at, look at that, 9 gigs almost already. I'm gonna come down here. This is pretty good. There's a lot of water here. And, okay. I mean, I can see the tree there, and not much quality again. Wait, is this actually RT? That's not. Maybe it's not fully RT. Maybe it's got screen space in some areas. Because look, RT is enabled for reflections, shadows, ambient occlusion, and the quality is maxed out as well on Ultra. So that is not the behavior of RT. You can't just cover the tree and it will go away. That's screen space reflections. So I'm guessing it's not fully RT. It's got some aspects of RT in it, but majority will be screen space. That is pretty bad, but whatever. I think for me personally, I would disable it. Doesn't look good, and it's not fully RT anyway, so not worth using in my opinion. But GPU is fully maxed out, not getting bottlenecked by the CPU, and FPS is sitting in the mid to high 60s, which is quite decent. But it is still stuttering, so even though FPS is good, the game doesn't feel good at all. Yeah, there's not much point in us continuing this run. I'm gonna go and push it up to 440p, no RT, ultra settings, and hopefully we can get a stable 70 to 80 FPS experience, and it'll be good there. Alright, see you guys there. Okay, so at 440p, ultra settings. We're getting bottlenecked occasionally still at in this area near the castle. I should say that inside the castle, FPS will be far higher than this. We're going to be sitting probably in the 140s to 150s, which is quite fantastic. But, I mean, indoors, not very intensive anyway, so it makes sense. The outdoor areas will be far more demanding and far more important. So, I'm going to be over here. Okay, let's look at the reflections without RT. Looks the same, man. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, see? Screen space. It's kind of weird. I did restart the game, so I made sure everything applied with RT, but I'm guessing not everything is RT. But yeah, FPS is sitting in the 80s, down into the 70s, so very similar to 1080p, because we were getting bottlenecked by the CPU. So, it's pretty good. I think for this card anyway, I'd rather play at 440p than 1080p. You kinda are wasting the power of this GPU by playing at 1080p. You get a far better looking game, far more clear, far sharper, by just playing at 440p. It's really good, and FPS wise, it's sitting in the 70s and 80s quite easily as well. Now, if you've got a better CPU, you can use DLSS as well to get more FPS on top of it, but I think for this CPU, it's gonna be bottlenecking it again, unfortunately. I think personally for me, with this card, I would play the game at the high settings instead of the ultra settings. Because of the VRAM limit, if you got the 12GB variant, then you can go ahead and play the game at ultra settings and be fine. But for this card, 10GB is not enough at ultra settings. On the 4090, I played for a little bit on that as well, and the VRAM was sitting at 11GB of usage, so 10GB again is not going to be enough. But 12 gigs will be enough. Alright, let's go ahead and quit out, enable RT, and come back. But I'm sure FPS will be sitting in the 30s and 40s, and the quality gains won't be all that impressive. Alright, see you guys there. Alright, here we are with RT enabled at 440p. I'm a bit worried now at this point, because again with RT, the VRAM usage will normally go up a little bit. Is that a chest? No, it's not. But, okay, sitting in the 40s and 50s, quite decent. Climb it, buddy, you got it. Climb up. Whoa, this might be VRAM bottleneck, guys. This has to be. Getting 8 FPS all of a sudden? Oh boy. Yeah. Not very good, is it? 7 FPS. Oh, did it fix itself? 20 FPS? Much better than 7 FPS. Now we get like a movie-like experience. Let's go 24 FPS. Let's go. Oh boy, this is rough. Alright, let's quit out. Let's play the game at 4K. And hopefully we can have a good experience with that. Okay, here we are at 4K. Ultra settings, no RT. And the game looks fantastic at 4K. This looks incredible. So sharp and so high quality. This looks amazing. And honestly, FPS wise, sitting in the 40s is pretty good as well. But again, VRAM might become an issue at 4K. I really wish this card started off with 12 gigs instead of 10 gigs, because it simply isn't enough anymore. And what's crazy is that the 40 series cards, like the 4070 and the 4060, apparently will come with 8 gigs of VRAM. So you already know, with those cards, even though they'll have the power to play the games at ultra settings, we'll be getting bottlenecked quite heavily there as well. Really wish cards like came with at least 12 gigs at this point, ideally 16 gigs like AMD does, but what can we do really? So far, we're not getting VRAM bottlenecked. FPS is sitting in the 40s and 50s, which is quite decent, although we do get a bit of stuttering, so it's not perfectly smooth unfortunately, but FPS wise it's doing quite decent, and we can use DLSS at this point as well and bring our FPS up into the 60s and 70s. I think at this point I'm gonna go ahead and pause it and enable DLSS. Over here, there we go, TI high. I'm gonna enable DLSS. And I'm gonna be using the balance preset. Sharpness we'll keep at 0 for now, but I'll increase it if it does look pretty poor. Okay, here we go. Looking at the sharpness, the game looks quite fantastic. This looks just as good as native 4K. But looking up on the mountains there, like what is that? It looks like it's depth of field, but I have it disabled, I'm pretty sure. Depth of field is disabled right here. So is that DLSS doing that? It looks pretty weird, man. But in general, oopsie, sorry. But in general, the game looks fantastic. Can't really see any shimmering or any ghosting at all from the hair, for example, or the trees. It looks quite good. And FPS is sitting in the 70s and 80s. Alright, there's not much point in us testing at RT because the game was getting bottlenecked at 440p with RT enabled, so 4K will be far worse. We're going to be getting 4 FPS probably. So we'll ignore that. So yeah, to summarize the video, 1080p, you will need a powerful CPU to get really good frames, but ultra settings is playable, around 70 to 80 FPS with this CPU that I'm running right here. Playing at 440p will be more GPU demanding, so FPS will be sitting in the 60s all the way up into the 90s, which is really playable and really good as well. And at 4K, or at native 4K, VRAM might become an issue if you have the 10GB variant, but if you don't, then you're fine. But FPS wise is going to be sitting in the 40s and 50s, with occasional dips into the 30s. Now enabling DLSS with balance, you're going to be sitting in the 70s and 80s, which is far more playable and far more usable. So I would choose to go with that if you plan on playing the game at 4K. Alright, that's pretty much it guys. Thank you guys for watching, hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys, I guess in a couple of hours, for Hogwarts Legacy with the RTX 3060 Ti. See you guys there.